Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today we're getting started with our new project, Pineapple Pink. So grab something to drink and we'll get started just after this. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Hi, so glad you could join us today, and we're starting the work on our Pineapple Pink little table runner. We ran through the design in our last video and the materials that you need, and I just wanted to quickly go through that again, and then we'll get started with the sewing. So this is a pattern that's in the Pineapple Play book by Jean Ann Wright, and also it's going to use the Pineapple Trim Tool by Creative Grids. This is for the 10-inch block. This tool also does a 6 and an 8-inch block, so you've got some flexibility, and they do make one smaller for 4, 5, and 6. So lots of options there. I will notice for you that this does have a square here, so you can use this for other things. And then they also have this 45-degree angle too, that you could have multiple uses for this particular tool in some situations. This is not absolutely necessary. Frankly, nor is the book. But for the project that I'm working on, I am going to use both, primarily because I've never done a pineapple quilt before. This little sample back behind us is the only thing I've ever done. And when I first looked at this, I like the design, I like the way it looks, I love the colors, but I'd never done it. And it is a little intimidating because there's a lot of pieces of fabric in that. And they're all set just so, just a certain angle, excuse me, just a certain angle, just a certain size, and it looks like it'd be real easy to completely get lost. And when I watched the video that, there's a link here so you can see a YouTube video, it was confusing too. It wasn't until I sat down and started twisting this around and looking at both the diagrams here in the book, the diagrams in the instruction sheet for the tool, and look at all that. And also looking at the video, I had all three of them going on at one time, that it finally clicked. And now that I know exactly what the trick is, it's easy to do. So I think they're going to run through really quickly. So in the book, this particular design is an orange and gray color scheme. And it is for a table runner. And that's what I'm going to make. I'm going to make a table runner or a dresser scarf, or, I mean, you could use it for many different things. I think actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on top of a 1908 Singer treadle machine that I have. The top veneer is a little damaged, and it really just needs something to kind of put on top of it to dress it up a little bit. I think that's where I'm going to use this. So we'll see how that goes. So what I did was I went ahead since our last video and cut all the strips for the different colors. And we are substituting the pink for the orange, the green for the gray, and then the white remains the white. And we're not doing the borders on this because there's 2 borders on the long ends. We're not doing that. Or actually, I guess it's the end, but it's a little short piece. Does that make sense? It's a rectangle. So I'm not going to do those. I'm just going to do the pineapple designs and then put a binding around it. So let's do this. Let's get started and just kind of see where this goes. And if I'm able to explain it to you so that you understand it. Okay, the first thing we start with is the little square. And we're going to do a block just like this, where half of it is green and half of it is pink. And I'm going to have to refer back to the book and maybe even to the block as we go, just so that I know I'm telling you the right thing. So let's get started. So we start with the pink, and what we're going to do is we are going to put white strips around the pink. And we start with the smallest of the white strips, and this one is 3 inches. So we're going to line these up. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. How do I do this again? See, this is the problem that I had before, because when I look in the book, the picture in the book doesn't match what I sew. The picture in the book matches what it will look like after you trim it. So that's when I had to go back to the beginning of the book to show me how those pieces are put on. And you see that picture right there is what clues me into what I'm doing. So we're going to sew on this smallest white strip onto opposite sides of this pink, dark pink square. And the book said that these pieces have to be at least 1 3/4 inches wide, but they can be wider. And if you choose to cut as you go, you don't even need to cut these. You just sew it and clip it, sew it and clip it. That's especially good if you're working on a scrappy. My petal is up on the table. Let's fix that. Okay, so we're going to just use a regular straight stitch. I've got my 1/4 inch foot on my machine, and I'm just using an average length. Or I tell you what, I'm just going to use the length that comes up as standard on here. I'm using the cutting function of my machine so that I'm using as few tools as possible and have fewer things to keep up with. Okay, so we've got those two. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to plug in my little mini iron and get that ready as well, because you don't have to press, but it will make it easier. Okay, so I've got the 2 pieces sewn onto the pink block on opposite sides. I've got my little mini iron plugged in now, and I rearranged a few things just so it'd be easier. Now, what would be really nice here is if we took and pressed these in, press that pink block in. Probably isn't going to be practical to do that with every time, but we'll see how it goes. And then we're going to take 2 more white pieces. They're stuck together here. Okay. And we're going to sew those on the opposite ends. Now we've got 4 pieces of white around the pink, and I'm going to quickly see if we can press that in just so it's a little neater. This is optional, it's not absolutely required. Okay, we got a little bit of a press going there. And actually, I'm going to change my mind. I'm not going to press it. I'm going to press just the new fabric down. I'm not going to worry about pressing it in because that's too hard. Okay, so we've got that one. Pretty, right, already? And we're going to lay this down, and we're going to take, and I'm going to turn this other camera on here so that maybe we can see the close-up as well. All right, so I can talk to you here, and I can show you here. So on this tool, there are squares in the middle, and the white square here closest to the 45-degree angle it's in white. And what you're going to do is you're going to lay that tool on top of this work that you're working on so that that pink block is in that white square. And then you're going to take and cut on this diagonal edge here, just like that. These are trash. You'll have a lot of little pieces that you throw away with this. So now you rotate that to the next side. You're going to line up that pink square in that white block again, and you're going to cut on the angle. Throw those away. If you were using bigger pieces, it might be that you're not throwing them away. You're going to use them for a different purpose. And the third side, cut it, throw it away, and then the final side. Now, one of the reasons they tell you to make that center square, the pink one for this one, exactly, is so that when you sew it with your 1/4-inch seams, you will get the same size square as they're showing you on this tool. So now we have, put that right there, a perfect little square with the pink in the center and the white around the edges. Now we're going to move on to round 2. And in round 2, we're going to use the smallest pink strip. We'll need 2 of those, and the smallest green strip, because remember we're making this one where 2 are green and 2 are pink. Okay, and it doesn't matter which one you start with. Won't need that for a minute. But we're going to start with just the green, and we're going to line the green up so that it just extends over the square just a little bit. And not on opposites, not, that was my iron talking to me. Because we're working on this square where half is one color and half is the other color, the opposite sides of the square are opposite colors. Because you're working this and this. See, that gets a little tricky because when the first time you read it, you think, I'm working on pink, they're all going to be pink. For some patterns they might be, but not this one. And we're going to take this to our machine. Okay, we've got a pink one and a green one. And because we are going to make these alternating squares, we're going to press this just a little bit. We're going to do the green one here and the pink one here. Now, I will tell you that the first 2 that you put on that square, you're going to have a lot of fabric overlapping the pink square in the center. But on the second one you put, for this round 2, the fabric is not going to be as generous. So you're going to want to make sure that you line that up pretty well. I'm going to check it again. Yeah, I'm going to adjust it just a tad. Because you want to center it on that middle square or in the opening area. look there, we have it. Let's press it real quick. Okay, there we go. Now we need to trim it. And we're going to trim it similar to the way we did before, only this is round 2. So round 2, this is 1, this is 8, this is 6, this is 4, and this is 2. It's the one with the dotted square on the other end. And we center up that dotted square, round 2, and then we're going to trim, and this is going to help speed it up, on 2 sides. And then flip it around. Oops. I'm kind of working in a really small area here between the machine and the camera. Okay, pull those away. All right. So now we've got this little almost square. The ends are slightly cut off, but we're getting there. And now we're going to do the white again. We've used the smallest one the first time. Now we're going to use the next size. And for this, you're going to need 4 pieces. When you use the white, you're always going to use 4. When you use the colors, you're just going to use 2 on this particular block because we're doing the 2 color. And we're going to sew those on, flip them, and sew the other 2 on. This is round 3. 1, 2, 3. That's how you tell and count them. So we're going to look on our template this time for round 3. And there was something special about the round 3. The round 3, there's a line right here. A white solid line going across the tool. That's round 3, 5, and 7. And what you do is you set that line on the seam line here of that last block that you put in round 2. Because you're cutting a point. You're always cutting you're trimming up the round that you just sewed on, and you're using the previous round as your guide. It's not an easy way to explain that. So we cut that. We cut that. This one you'll have to do all 4 sides separately. And you want to make sure that you get that on there pretty accurately. And I say that you want it accurately because you're going to keep building on this, and it's kind of like laying bricks in a wall. If your line gets off wavy on the 2nd line of bricks, by the time you get to the 10th line of bricks, that little problem here is going to be a bigger problem there. So this is 1, 2, 3 rounds. Now we're on to round 4. And because we've only used 1 green, we're going to the 2nd size of green and the 2nd size of the pink. And then we're going to make sure that our colors match up. And look, we've got that one finished. Now I'm going to take a moment to press those down because that's a lot to keep track of as we trim it. Okay, so this is round 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we check our tool, round 4 has a square. So we just find that. This is going to be one of those that we can cut 2 at the time. We just line that square up with it. Move it over just a little. And we'll cut that, and we'll cut this. And then we're going to flip it over. Find that round 4 again. And I'll tell you, mine, I would say it's 99% lined up with that middle square. I think you're always going to have just a little bit off, but it's very, very close. So there we go. And what's next? The white is. We've used 1, 2. We're ready for the third size of white. And we are going to need 4 of this. And we're going to line it up. Usually there's just a little bit, it's just a little bit longer than you need. So it makes it pretty easy to line it up. And I'll tell you, putting your strips out like this does help too, because you can keep track of where you are, what size is next, without having to say, well, now I need the 3-inch and now I need the 4-inch. You just pick up the next one. Now on this round, the block is big enough and the strips are small enough that we can sew all 4 of these on. So that's, I'm going to take them carefully over here, and I'm going to do that. Okay, there we go. We've got that next row of white all put on, and you can begin to see now that that little bit of area between the squares here, it's getting a little bit bigger. And I'm going to press this, and then we're going to trim it. Okay, there we are pressed. This is the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth round. So we're going to look at our tool again. We're looking for the 5th round, and round 5 uses the white edge there on the last one we used. So we're going to trim, spin it around. Trim. And there we go. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds done. And we're ready now for what? Another pink and another green. So we've used 2. We go to the 3rd size. Now, I think that you kind of get the idea of what we're doing here. We're using this tool as our guide. If you did not have this tool, you would probably need to use just a ruler that would have 1¼ inch that you would cut off each one. And since there are 1¾ inch, that's going to give you your seam allowance to take it off. I think that's the same for each one. You may have to use a square for the one that you're cutting both of them off. And you could also, I think you could also probably use a square and tape off the middle square for you to get started if you wanted to do that. Instead of having you sit and watch me do all this, I'm going to go through and run the rest of the strips on this to get almost done with this, and then we'll be back and I'll show you how we're going to make this into a formal square. Okay, so we have all 8 rounds together, and it's just the same thing each time the way they're sewn on. When you get finished with the 8th round, then you're going to need to put corners in this block. And the instructions in this book say to cut a 3-inch strip of fabric to make your squares. And I'll be honest with you, that's what I did. I cut a 3-inch strip of fabric, cut it into squares, and then made the corners here. But what I found out was that I didn't think they were big enough. I think they were pretty skimpy. So I'm just trying to think if we have enough to cut another strip, and I think we do. And we should be able to get enough out of here. I think what I'm going to do is cut a 3½ inch strip of fabric and then cut 3½ inch squares. I can always trim them off, right? And I don't know what's causing that. Am I not pressing the seams out enough? Because it's not but just a little bit. I tell you what, let's do 3¼ because 3¼ is going to be bigger than what I have, but it's not going to be so big that if I have to go back and use that piece that I've already cut, I won't be able to. And let's just go ahead right now and cut the 2 that we need for this. So if we cut the strip 3¼ we need 3¼ perpendicular to get us our square. Now it could be too that my seam allowance might have been a little off, or when I cut them in half it might have been a little bit off. I don't know, but either way we're going to make it just a little bit bigger. And then we're going to cut that square in half. Wish I had a little better. Okay, so there's 2. And then let's cut another strip of the green. We should have plenty of it. Tell you, while we're doing this, let's run over some things that we've talked about so far, but I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page, because even in doing this the second time, there's a few things that I've noticed that helped me. There's a little lump in the fabric there at the end. First of all, a good 1/4 inch seam is very helpful, and it will keep the size of your project consistent from block to block. And although I thought there that maybe we did not need the 1/4 inch foot, I think it's better if you use it, even if on those first couple of seams it's a little cumbersome. Then I would iron at least between rounds, if not, well, I tell you, for those first couple of rounds, and see, I did not cut that one square. I think we'll be okay though. I mean, no, exactly in the middle. I would sew on the first couple of rounds the opposite sides and press and then come back and sew the other two. When you get it so that you're not overlapping those fabrics that you're adding, I would sew all 4 on and then press and move on to the round. But I would press between each round. And this is great for me showing you how to do it, but I think a regular size iron with a little bit more heat would do a better job. And it also, I think, would be faster. With this one, I'm having to cover so much ground with this little iron that it's taking longer, and I'm having to do more of an ironing versus a pressing. And that's not good to keep your fabrics straight and orderly and not have them stretch on you. Okay, so on this portion, let me grab a couple of pins because we've got triangles here instead of strips. So it's going to be a little different. Okay, we're going to use the same color fabric that our strips are in those corners. So we're going to add the pink triangle to where the pink fabric is, and we're going to kind of center it because we're going to trim it. And that was one of the things with the smaller size triangles. It was difficult to center it because there wasn't a whole lot of extra to play with. Now you could fold it in half to make a little mark on both of the fabrics and use that as a centering. I don't think you should have to do that though. You should be able just to eyeball it. So, okay, so we've got those. We're going to run some seams and then we're going to come back and trim it up. They want you to trim it to 10.5 inches. So let me sew and then we'll look at trimming. Okay, I've got my little side camera here lined up so I can show you some close-ups. We've got all 8 rounds done on the block, and we've added the little half triangles, or the triangles, half square triangles, to the outside to finish up the block. And it says to trim the block to 10.5 inches using this. And I think, let me do some checking because I suspect that this template is exactly 10.5 inches. How convenient is that? That's just great. So we should be able to put this, and look at there, we can. If we put the, how will I, there is a box in here that says centering square round 8. So if we put that on top or around our box in the middle, our square in the middle, I notice that these edges here are all 10.5 inches. The only thing that needs to be trimmed are the little triangles we just added. So we can quickly do that. That was kind of an awkward angle to cut in. Here's one here. We're going to have to come this way. And then that way. Now see, that was something I just learned. And put that right back on the center. And you can also check here, some of the other lines should fall right on your seam lines as well. So we're going to trim that up using our template. Haven't cut there. That is right on the edge of the cutting mat, but enough we could do it. So we used the actual template as our trimming tool for 10.5 inches. That's great. And what we came up with was a block that is accurately 10.5 inches. We sewed it all together just here during this video, with the exception of some edit points that I'll take out. And this is what we're going to use. Now we're going to use this block and another block that's 3/4 green and only 1/4 pink. But it's going to go together exactly the same way. So I think we're just going to call this video done now. And what I'm going to do is come back in the next video and show you how that other block goes together very briefly, because the technique is the same. We're only going to be changing it to put in a 3rd green pie wedge. Instead of 2 and 2, it's going to be 3 greens and 1 pink. I know I've said that a couple of times. And we're going to need the blocks for that. And let me catch my book again, because I forget exactly how many. We're going to need, where does it tell me? We need 4 of A and 4 of B. Is that right? That's what it says. So I have 2 made of the one kind. So I need to make 2 more of this and then 4 more of the other kind. And as a hint or a trick or technique for you, if you're going to be making this whole thing, I would, like I did, make one ahead of time. And then once you're confident that you know how the pieces are placed and how to use the tool to trim it, then I would make all the rest of those blocks. So for example, if we made this as our first sample block, then I would make all 3 of those at the same time. So I'd take round 1 and I'd do round 1 on 3 blocks, and round 2 and round 3 and round 4. And by the time you get to putting the triangles on, you're completely finished with that. And then your mind can move on to the second block. And once you get both of those blocks done, you'll have all the pieces you need to assemble for this quilt. So as I said, we're going to leave it here today. I'm so glad that you joined us. We've learned something new. I learned something new just filming this video today. And I was able to take a problem that I discovered here in this one and figure out a solution. Just an extra 1/4 inch on that square made a big difference. And I hope that that helps you as much as it's going to help me putting the rest of the blocks together. So we'll see you next time. We'll work on that other block then, and then maybe even work into assembling it at that time, because there's no sashing on this one, and it's just going to be the blocks assembled together and then a binding put on it. So we'll see you next time. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you see everything new. This particular project is going to move pretty fast, and we're going to probably get it together, I would say, in 4 weeks, 4 videos. So stick with us and have a ball with it. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time at the Shamrock Quilt Studio.